Hello and welcome to the Good Old Days. I'm Pat Riley, and this is our program focusing on the history of Raynham. Our host is retired Selectman Don McKinnon.
And Pat, you and I are going to have a show together because our guest
Needed to
illness
reschedule for another
has to
time.
reschedule. So you and I always, however, put on
Something
what you
to
call your
talk
basic
about.
1 to 10 and 9.5 show.
Absolutely.
Not to brag, but a 9.5. So I think we'll go early on, Pat, to what happened or happening. So the good old days.
Right.
And the first thing
Today's current events is tomorrow's history. So
and this is why the election of 2015 is history.
it's now history.
History. And we've got the election results in, and I'll just go down them one by one, and we'll talk about them if need be. First one, of course, is moderator, and we know that's John Donahue, and that's 696. And John's taken over for a gentleman named William Tripp, who was been on for many, many years. I think John's probably in his third year, though. The time goes by.
You know, that's a position, Don, that it seems like people keep for a long time. Bill Tripp was it for several years, and before him, I think, was Mr. McCusker,
Joe
who had been
McCusker
there
had
for
it.
years.
And then whoever was, I forget the one before, but whoever that had it many, many years. So yes, and it's one of those ones that's very important
Absolutely.
because to control the town meeting is to make sure someone doesn't come in and get out of line. So John does
a good job.
Does a very good job of it, and he's had no. I did ask him, has he thrown anybody out yet? And I think Billy maybe throw out two people, and John hasn't thrown anyone out. I think he might have warned one or two. Watch it, but except for that, and maybe Pat, he would have got the 700 if he didn't warn those 3 or 4. Those 3 or 4 people warned, say, he's not getting my vote. So anyway. And the next one is Marcia Sylvia, who is town clerk, 714. They're always up there in the top 2 or 3.
Town clerk and town moderator, right, exactly.
And Marcia has been town clerk, and prior to that, it was her mother for many years.
And she was the assistant for many years.
Many years. And
her
prior
mom,
to that,
Helen,
Arnold
was
Ziegler, and prior to that, Lily B. Merrill. And I would venture to guess maybe 200 people, or maybe 500 maybe, know who Lily B. Merrill was. But she was town clerk prior to town hall.
Really?
So she worked out of her house often, and there were times when they were in the house. And so Marcia's doing, obviously, because it's second nature to her.
Right.
And
doing a good job.
so there
Great
she
job.
is doing great. The next is for selectmen, and that is the first contested election. And Richard Chavo, who I appeared with Richard and I appeared together on, it was Agree to Disagree for, he reminds me, about 6 months. And that was how long. And we had good times together. As a matter of fact, Richard was the one who succeeded of 4 candidates to replace my, I'll say, chair 3 years ago. That was when I ran the last time. And anyway, Karen Roberts was one of the 4 that ran also. And I believe she finished second 3 years ago, and she won the seat this time.
She went on the finance committee after
For 3
being
years she's been on
unsuccessful. She's been on the
finance.
finance committee.
3 of the 4 candidates were active in town. One would be Dick, of course, he was selectman. Another was Karen, she was finance. And
Kevin Marrera.
Is on Conservation
Right,
Commission now.
exactly.
So that's pretty good track record, because to this day and age, Pat, you have trouble getting people.
To get involved.
So that was decided to turn it over. When I ran back in 1812, I think it was, Pat, my original slogan was "Time for Change," and I would say of the 2 races that turned over, if I were running, I would have used the same thing, time for change. It's just a matter of opinion.
Right.
And the citizen side, it was time for change. For the assessor, Jennifer Banks Oldfield, 646. pretty good number turnout for a person, with no disrespect, but not that well known locally. Her father, Jim, of course, is well known in the town, and
The American Legion Post
American Legion
405, the past commander.
and has done so much volunteer work about the time. So Jim,
But Jen has a good background, so for the position, and obviously it was an open seat because
Yeah.
Gordon decided not to run for that and to run for sewer commissioner instead.
and when Gordon did not take out papers, though he took out papers for the sewer commission, but when he did not take out papers for assessor, he waited to make sure someone qualified took out papers.
Sure.
Not that he's prejudging for the final people, but if no one of stature had run, he would have had to jump back in again, which I don't understand why he didn't anyway, but he chose just to run for the one position.
Sure.
And she came on in. She's a loan officer for the Bristol County Savings, and she knows the current assessors that are on there, and so she'll work very well with them, and she's very well qualified.
Yes,
Pat.
and that is a position that you do need qualifications and professional experience for.
That's right. And as a matter of fact, now the current person who is the key person, Maureen Monahan, is talking about retiring in the next year or two. And so there will be bringing up the clerk who is her assistant, who's taken the courses and all. So, but that's a challenging thing, the full-time job.
Sure.
As is the part-time job. Okay, do you want to go over the rest? Then you take sewer.
Sewer Commission, we had John Dolan, who again had served in that position for many, many years, a professional engineer himself.
Yes.
And he was the incumbent, and Gordon Luciano, as you mentioned, was the challenger. And Gordon received 637 votes to John Dolan's 214. Again, as you said, just that time for change kind of thing. I guess
That's
that
what
was the
people said.
sentiment.
If there was a message, that was the message, time for change. Yeah.
And that was a spirited campaign, obviously.
That was well on candidate night, which went very well.
Yes.
You did very well candidate night,
Thank you.
Patricia Riley. I think this will show later on down there.
Okay, but let me just take a break right here, Dawn. What about the turnout, though? We said 905 total votes out of, what did we say, how many registered voters? It was 9%, basically.
Yeah, 10,000.
10,000 voters, 9%, which usually a selectman's race brings out a good crowd. And then you had the, hotly contested sewer commission race.
Right, they
I
did.
would have expected a larger turnout.
Well, I never worry about that, Pat, because I go to the story. I know they're tired of hearing it, but you're going to hear it one more time. When Merrill Viles, when they used to hand count the vote, and they did it in blocks of 50, and he'd bring it out to us. We'd all be begging for the numbers, and he'd reprimand us right away. This doesn't official, and this doesn't count anything except for the 50, and I don't want to hear, and he'd yell at us, we all go, okay, Merrill, just give us the, which someday we're going to get his son, Bob, on here.
Sure.
But anyway, after 5 or 6 of those, what are we talking? After 150, 200 votes. Now he had 900.
Well, actually, in each precinct, the results were the same for the 4 precincts. So
They were. So my point is, statistically, they've always come out the same. This isn't Upper New York and things like this. Is Little Raynham, and you could tell based on those blocks how the vote was going to go. I say that because I don't want to bring either dishonor or honor to candidates that may feel that they could have won if, or they would have lost if. No, this percentage,
right,
which came in, would have, I believe, been the same if you
The
had had,
results,
instead of 900, if you had had 5,000. Yeah, I believe you would have had the same number. Now, the other question, of course, which is valid, why not more people?
Well, you made a
2 or
couple
3
good
reasons on
points,
that. Yeah.
too, Don, is the fact that I was referring back to 9 years ago when I first ran for office, and we had twice as many voters I think,
That's
that
right.
turned out.
Yeah, we
Instead of
ended up with
1900.
yeah.
But as you pointed out, there were mailings at that point. Some people don't read the local newspapers or watch cable, even though that's hard to understand. They wouldn't be watching
How
us
can our
right
ratings be
now.
so high if they're not watching, Pat? This
But
doesn't
some
make
people
any
don't,
sense
and
at
so a
all.
mailing reaches out, or people going door to door. And that particular race was a very hotly contested selectman's race, with
Yes.
you being opposed. So you go around door to door and so forth, so that alerts a lot more people that there's an election going on.
What we did in those races, I'll say my opponent and I, because I can speak for us, we both spent over $1,000, which for me is our own money. You know, we don't go around and get money. And then when you see how the race is going, you might go up another 3 to 4. So I might have gone up to 1,500. So if you see the race coming in more lively, you might come up with a few more money. Now, what we did was we had mailings which went out to people. We had ads which went out to people.
Right.
We had signs that went up with probably a month and a half to 2 months to go. How did that contrast to this race? Well,
There were a lot of signs, but they went up later.
Pat, the paint was still wet on those signs when the election day came. Yours were the first to
First
go up.
I know, really.
You were number one. Now, when did you put those up? With how many weeks to go? Do you remember?
I think it was probably the first weekend in April I started putting them out. So maybe 3 weeks before the election. Maybe 3 weeks. But some
And
of
you
them,
were first.
And I was first.
And you were school committee. No disrespect, but I mean, usually the selectmen's race was, no disrespect to the people who didn't put out signs and put them out late and the whole thing. I'm just trying to explain the low number of turnout. That's all. I'm not looking for an argument out there, people. I'm just trying to explain something to you. But the signs didn't go out. Some signs actually went out in the week of the election. So,
Yes.
so no disrespect, and as I say, the numbers would have been the same. And I'm always fine if 12 people voted, fine.
Right.
I go with, with the game plan, I'll play with it. But there were no ads in any paper that I saw. 3 papers now,
Right.
no ads.
There was coverage. There was coverage of the
coverage of the-
candidates. Nice.
yeah.
But Don, I was just speaking to somebody today, actually, who said he never reads the newspaper. So I think, compared to 9 years ago, I think you're seeing less people reading
the
local
papers.
newspapers.
But I think candidates' night was a factor. I think that
In the
the
outcome.
signs were a factor. I'm talking about how people won and lost.
Sure.
I still believe in the word is visibility, Pat. And I stand at the same place, and I stood at that same spot holding a sign for a candidate named Riley on that particular, because that's where I stand. And I happened to be with Dick Chavo. Now, Dick and I, we've known each other for many, many years, and we discussed things, and we agreed to disagree on some things. But the visibility counts, I believe, and I think your signs counted, as we will see when we get down. What is the next one we're getting
Planning
to?
Board, John Texera, 623 votes. He was unopposed. He's new on the Planning Board, but John is on the Council on Aging and well-known in
And
town.
on the council for, but see, the Council on Aging is appointed.
Right.
So it wasn't the election time.
Right.
It's,
First time is
visibility is
enough
very, very
for
important
election,
here.
I believe,
Now,
yeah.
but however, John, years ago, was on Park and Rec for quite a few years, as a
Okay.
matter of fact.
Yeah.
And I did an excellent job.
Right.
So John, 623, which is respectable for a person, first time out as far as most voters are concerned. What we forget is that many of the people vote. Here's the other thing about a low turnout. They want to vote on Tuesday. They want to vote at 7 o'clock in the morning. They want to vote for President of the United States if it isn't too much trouble. So people like the high visibilities, the federal, the Congress, the House and Senate. And here we are, our little town election, and a lot of people not only don't know, they don't care. Yeah, it's funny because
know.
O'Neill said it, all politics is local, but yet there are people that just don't care to vote. And again, I'm not going to get upset about that stuff because to what end? What difference?
Right,
You know,
right.
they chose to do it. I said
It's a
I can
choice.
remember times when the vote was at the Merrill School, And I can remember going in and having a difficult time finding a parking space. So I finally got parking space. Now I'm going to vote. Well, where are all the people? Well, they're out on the ball fields, which is fine. That's what they should do. But then it wouldn't be too bad if they also would vote. But they don't. They get back in their car and go home.
You know, Don, I think about several years ago when people in Afghanistan had the chance to vote for the first time, and they walked for miles.
I know.
And it was a dangerous situation. They're actually taking their lives in their hand to do that, and they walked for miles for the opportunity to do that.
Early democracy is is very important.
Yeah.
Well, at this school race, there were 3 people. And you had a little candidate night too, and that got testy. It's the first time ever it got a little testy because
we actually had 3 because we had 2 in Bridgewater and the one in
and the one in Bridgewater was being shown this afternoon.
Really?
With Joe Gillis being one of the moderators.
Yes. But we had Tony Gelfi, who was one of the incumbents, a school committee member. We drafted him 3 years ago because no one took out papers for the position.
I always tell him we sent a Jeep down to his house and picked him up.
That's right. But he decided that he really enjoyed it, and he's been a great member, a Brockton school teacher, so he brings that teaching perspective.
Yeah, he's a good guy, Tony.
He is. And so he got 533 votes. Our challenger, Jan Balyaneo, got 155, and somebody by the name of Patricia Riley was very, very fortunate to get 747.
Which I missed originally. I was looking at the wrong numbers naturally. But Patricia, you got the high vote, 747. 2 reasons could be. One is you're Patricia Riley, and you're a rave director. And you got your signs out first, and people made mention of that. They said, "Well, Pat's got plenty of signs." Right. When some of the other people, God bless them, they didn't have too many locations, but you had locations, and of course you did very well in the debate. That came across very strong, and of course you are the chairman, and you are Pat Riley. So 747 for Pat, and so that was to vote for 2. And we're very glad that Tony got back on in sort of a partnership with you.
Exactly. But got to bring a little issue up about the school committee, too, is that Bridgewater, obviously, to be on the school committee, you have to be elected in Bridgewater and Raynham.
Yes.
4 members from Bridgewater,
Which
4
makes
from
me
Raynham.
nervous.
But they're elected district-wide. Now, Bridgewater had twice as many voters as people that voted in Raynham.
Because they're twice the population, by the way. Percentage-wise, they're probably the same number of votes.
Yeah,
you know? 10%
right.
of their
right, but their polls were open 3 hours earlier. 7 to 7, Raynham didn't open until 10. So that sort of gives them a little more advantage besides the larger number of voters.
Yes.
So you could very easily, in this case, have had a Raynham person receive every single vote in Raynham, and Bridgewater determine who the Raynham person would be.
That's right.
So that's a concern.
And Bridgewater is the reason we vote in April. Now, we had a couple, fine, that were sitting there the night that we worked the polls, you and I, and they said, well, it should be on Tuesday. And no, Bridgewater's the one who changed us to April. We used to vote in March.
Really?
And to make it so that you could run in Bridgewater, you weren't going to run in March in Bridgewater, have them come out for this. So, and naturally, we bent for Bridgewater. So, and we did. So that's the reason we did that. Why we don't open at 7 in the morning, Bridgewater's attuned to the national elections.
Right.
And you might have lost a few one way or the other. My point is that if you understand a local election, though, you should also understand the time. And so I think most
people always have the option of getting an absentee ballot, too.
I talked to a gentleman at the senior breakfast who came at 7 in the morning, wasn't open, turned around, went off shopping, and came back and voted later on in the day.
Those people,
so we hope they do that.
Right.
And that's the way it's going to continue because that's the way it is.
Now, I had a few people ask me why, if you're, voted a Raynham representative, are you elected district-wide? And as you know, Don, the reason for that is because Bridgewater has the larger population. The only reason, otherwise it would have been more Bridgewater school committee members than Raynham school committee members. The reason for 4 and 4 is that it has to be elected district-wide.
This goes way back, and that's a good representation because, well, we'll get into that someday when we're had a few glasses of wine.
And then, of course, we had the 2 Bridgewater School Committee members who were running unopposed from the
right.
Bridgewater members,
I'm
Michael
lucky to get 'em on
Dolan
there.
and Jason Hammond, and obviously they were running unopposed. Michael got 493 votes, and Jason 507 in Raynham.
Housing Authority?
Do you know Mr. Marsh? Earl Marsh got 594 votes.
No.
Okay, we'll have to invite him to come on
We
the
will.
show.
We got all sorts of possibilities on this show. No wonder the ratings are sky high.
Housing Authority, Joanne Stanley,
Now, we know the Stanleys,
616 votes.
Joanne, we've known for years, and her husband was town accountant in Raynham for probably 20 years, maybe 25.
That's Stanley.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, Belcher Stanley,
Stanley.
who was also still the accountant in the Water District.
Okay.
And he was the full-time accountant in Bridgewater for maybe 10 years. So that's the Stanley family, and it's a wonderful, wonderful family.
Excellent.
And their son works for, I believe, the Water District. Quite sure.
Park and Recreation Commissioner, again, we had someone running unopposed, James Brow, and got
And,
602 votes.
I must admit, I'm not sure I know James. I
have
might
to invite him too.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, we've got
We got
several
him.
shows
We
lined
got
up.
him coming at us. Here's an unknown person.
Cemetery Commissioner was our own Reverend James Tilby, who received 700 votes.
And Barbara Sleezer has had some medical reversals. Is doing fine, though. We go see her on a regular basis. And as a matter of fact, I got to get up next week. Every other week I go see Barbara. And so she did not take out papers for the cemetery, and she was very pleased to hear that Reverend Tilby agreed to come on board, which was very nice of him to do that.
Absolutely.
Everybody likes him. As a matter of fact, Pat, when we did our first show in 2011, Reverend Tilby was one of the historians who came on.
Yes.
Because he wrote, "If these stones could talk, or
Yes, about
rocks
the
could talk,"
church.
about the stone church. And he did that with...
Which, speaking of history too, the following day, the Stone Church, the First Congregational Church, had a big celebration as well. An anniversary
They're
for them.
150 or something, or
And
200.
people came in costume.
Yeah, isn't
and,
that nice?
It was very
Yeah.
nice.
I wasn't invited, but that's all right. Not that I'll hold my breath, you know. So, but it was very nice of them to
You
do
just
that.
must have missed the invitation.
I think it was in the mail. I do believe that. Okay, Pat, I'm going to prevail upon you now. And we may run out of time doing this, I'm not sure, but if we do, we do. If we don't, we don't, as we say. The first is the parade, and the next is the senior speaking program, if I may.
Yes, so we
Prevail
have our
upon
Memorial Day Parade. This is our 3rd annual Raynham Memorial Day Parade coming up. It's Memorial Day weekend, obviously. It'll be on the Saturday, which is May 23rd, and we hope everybody comes. It's going to be the same parade route. We'll be forming at the Merrill and the Liberty parking lots and floats along Darrington Drive. And the parade's going to start sharply at 10 a.m. 9 o'clock last year seemed a little bit early for some
Yeah,
people, so it was
yeah.
decided at 10 o'clock. And people that, any floats or groups can start coming to form around 8:30. And if you're planning to walk or to ride, people can come between probably 9 and 9:30, because 10 o'clock, retired Chief Peter King is
runs
the
us.
parade master.
That has
and we're
not
gonna
changed
start,
his ability to get things done.
Absolutely. We're going to step off right on time, and it will proceed along Pleasant Street through the four-corner intersection, which will be decorated with our flags, which is also
Which is
part of
really
our
wonderful,
salute to our
yeah.
veterans, and along South Main Street, then take a right onto King Philip Street and over to the Gazebo Park, where we have a very nice Memorial Day ceremony there.
And you're on a committee, is it Sandy Leahy's on that committee?
Yeah, it's
I
actually
think
Rave
Kim Dolan is
started it.
also
Yeah,
on that.
Rave started it, and it's our Salute to Veterans Committee. Sandy Leahy and Taryn Riley are the co-chairs, and of course Kim Dolan, our Rave coordinator. And myself, we have a great committee. The American Legion Post 405, very, very much involved. The commander this year, Bill Ryder, and the past commander,
Billy
Jimmy
is great. He
Banks.
traveled the country, so he took a lot of time off. Not off, but out of this area.
But he's back for the
He's
parade,
back.
exactly.
He's
And the
back.
Legion has made a very nice donation for us to get the trolley again. We got the Brockton Plymouth trolley, which will be decorated in
Well,
red,
I'm never
white,
sure
and
where I'm
blue.
going to end up, but someday I'm going to end up in that trolley.
And
I was
we'd
in
like
your
veterans.
dad's car the last couple of years with a unknown person named Gil Santos. And Gil and I go.
Yes. But we're looking for veterans. If anybody knows any veterans or military members to ride in that trolley, we'd really like to have it filled to capacity this time.